Good afternoon, class. Welcome to this edition of Mrs. McGowan's podcast. Today is November 10th, and I'm coming to you from the classroom. Today we're going to take a look back at the history of slavery and its presence in America. Now we're going to have to review a little bit. Remember our explorer simulation and our discussion of the two countries, Spain and Portugal, and their role in American exploration. Now remember Portugal, they were pretty famous for their sailing technologies. They had superior mathematical knowledge, and their sailing techniques made their fleet capable of navigating the high Atlantic seas. So, as you have learned, they began to explore down the western African coast from a period of around 1415 to the 1600s. Now they had an accurate understanding of the complicated coastline due to their maps and their knowledge of the high seas. And they exported gold, ivory, and pepper, among other resources, but more importantly, for our purposes, we're going to discuss how 175,000 slaves were taken to Europe and the Americas during this period. And then later on, we're going to learn in 1600, the involvement of the Dutch and English created the magnitude of the slave trade to grow exponentially. So, as we've discussed, the Portuguese began taking captives, slaves to the Caribbean to work on sugarcane plantations. Now, just a hint, this is where the English actually get the idea of slave labor and having slaves work on plantations and on farms. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. So today, we're going to take a look at a primary source. So what's that, you ask? A primary source is a first-hand account of an event. Now today, this first-hand account is from King Afonso I, his letter to Portugal's king to end the slave trade. Now King Afonso is from Congo, Africa. Now the Portuguese converted him to Christianity and helped him take his father's throne. So therefore, King Afonso and Portugal had a pretty good relationship to start. However, Afonso soon realized that his relationship had extremely negative consequences when he began to see that Portugal had in fact been sending merchants to capture Africans, making them slaves and sending them on to the Americas and Europe. So in this letter, Afonso is pleading and begging the King of Portugal to end the slave trade. King Afonso begins, "Sir, in our kingdoms there is another great inconvenience, which is of little service to God, and this is that many of our people, keenly desirous as they are of the wares and things of your kingdoms, which are brought here by your people, and in order to satisfy their voracious appetite, seize many of our people, freed and exempt men, and very often it happens that they kidnap even noblemen and the sons of noblemen and our relatives and take them to be sold to the white men who are in our kingdoms. And for this purpose they have concealed them, and others are brought during the night so that they might not be recognized. And we cannot reckon how great the damage is, since the mentioned merchants are taking every day our natives, sons of the land, and sons of our noblemen and vassals and our relatives, because the thieves and men of bad conscience grab them wishing to have the things and wares of this kingdom which they are ambitious of. They grab them and get them to be sold, and so, great sir, is the corruption that our country is being completely depopulated. And your highness should not agree with this, nor accept it as in your service. And to avoid it, we need from those kingdoms no more than some priests, a few people to reach in schools, and no other goods except wine and flour for holy sacrament. That is why we beg of your highness to help and assist us in this matter, commanding your factors that they should not send here either merchants or wares, because it is our will that in these kingdoms there should not be any trade of slaves nor outlet for them. Concerning what is referred above, again, we beg of your highness to agree with it, since otherwise we cannot remedy such an obvious damage. So, as you can see, King Afonso is just pleading to King John III of Portugal to stop sending merchants and stop sending other Portuguese over and capturing these Africans, making them slaves, and sending them on to Europe or the Americas to work on plantations. So this is just an example of a primary source, a first-hand account. This actually happened. This letter was in 1526. So as you can see, this is kind of where some of the roots of the slave trade began. You know, Portugal had a huge impact, and then later on, and tomorrow, we will actually discuss England's role in the slave trade and how they began to be involved in the slave trade and have slaves actually work in the continental North America on the plantations there that they go ahead and explore and settle. So stay tuned for tomorrow for another edition of Mrs. McGowan's podcast. Thanks for listening. The information provided from Portuguese role in the slave trade was found on the Metropolitan Museum of Art website at metmuseum.org. The letter from King Afonso was found on Oxford First Source website. That's oxfordfirstsource.com.